demostrando que es F.D.M. Esto es familia, demostrando que la lírica de lo que brillan, demostrar es que el negro es de black, demostrando que el tribro del clan, él prende el param, pam pam, F.D.M. Aquí nadie detiene, no detiene, no, y no detiene, no.
brother, man.
F.D.M, 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 yeah. F.D.M, 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 yeah. F.D.M, 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 yeah. F.D.M family, fuck family.
Daddy, Neto, de Black, Peque, lo hacemos por cultura y tú lo haces por los billetes.
Daddy, Neto, de Black, Peque, venimos a un barrio humilde llamado F.D.M.
F.D.M, agrupación que se mantiene trabajando en la cultura para que esta localidad se llene de versos y argumentos, capacitación y buena obra, trabajándole bien fuerte para no comer de lo que sobra. Más lírica, más empeño, reduciendo las problemáticas, más crítica al sistema, pero no afectan las temáticas. Con coraje y orgullo, optimizando toda la área. Somos diferentes a muchos, mejor llénense de nostalgia. Aquí está el que te apoya, el que espalda te aclama. Está el que te tiene bronca y un así sube su palma. Una fría, una joda, una rumba, un baqueteo. La nueva zona RBC lanzándose un rapeo. Risas del Prado, Francisco de Miranda 1 y 3. Y desde el 2 fue que esto empezó a nacer. Desde barrios viejos, tercera calle es la conexión. F.D. Family es otro beta, llénate de información.
Francisco de Miranda es un barrio humilde, no vengo a hacerle propaganda. No tienes que tener cuidado con quién te metes y con quién andas y echarle ganas. Y me di cuenta y comprendí de quiénes son los reales panas. Unos son deportistas y otros están pendientes de la rama. Chimosos criticadores que por su barrio no hacen nada. Por la mañana salen estudiantes y lo que quieren ganar su lana. Yo soy otro que me engancho. Aquí de todo bodega, casa, parcela, campo y hasta rancho. Hay rico, pobre, flaco y también cuerpos de gancho. Secuestran tuki, boletas y lo que nos vestimos ancho. Este bro es mi carnal. Con ellos todos los días en la esquina me pongo a rapear. Muchos políticos prometen que mi barrio lo van a mejorar, pero como si no cambian ni al consejo comunal. Hasta cuando en la calle se encontrarán niños descalzos, ni se entren a coñazo, ni se caigan a balazo. Hasta cuando F.D.M se rayará con madrugonazo. Sí, se rayará con madrugonazo.
En cada esquina se siente la adrenalina. Es como de estar despechado y no tener pa' la cantina. Escúchame y entiéndeme, deja tu falso invento. Este brother es un evento neto. Este es my intro. Del día que nacimos para vencer. Daddy Peque de planeta, F.D.M completo. La vida me fortalece, compa podrás ver que lo que estos chamos cantan no es coba ni cuento. De la vereda 9 al frente de los eucaliptos se crió que este chamito que hoy en día no creen en mitos. Hijo de María Díaz y William el camionero. Gracias por sus valores me he convertido en un certero. Espero que sus buenos deseos nunca se vayan. Sus miles de oraciones me acompañen donde vayan. Sé que ustedes querían que yo fuera un ingeniero, pero la vida me ha enseñado en hacer un humilde rapero. Aquel rapero que derrima que está alto y está entregando todo por dejar su barrio en alto.
En mi barrio se vacila, F.D.M la familia, donde tiene que estar pila. Lleva tu vida muy tranquila, pendiente con personas que desde lejos te vigila, que con chisme te aniquila, su hipocresía lo fusila. Es que hermano y que hermana, gachana, semana a semana, de tarde mañana, bodega, si ganan al treo, farían inhala, pero una persona son sanas y otras que no la son. Aquel lado de tisana, carajito lanzan fon, nadie pierde su noción, se rapea de corazón. Hay todo tipo de profesión, carpintero, electricista, camionetero, gitacista, mototaxi de los prados. De buena gente está rodeado entre las calles de El 2, en donde Peque se ha criado. De Francisco de Miranda yo me siento inspirado y orgulloso de mi barrio, humildemente enamorado.
Sube la mano si te sientes F.D.M. Sube la mano si te sientes F.D.M. Sube la mano si te sientes F.D.M. Si no sube la mano, compa, porque de algo teme. Sube la mano si te sientes F.D.M. Sube la mano si te sientes F.D.M. Sube la mano si te sientes F.D.M. Si no sube la mano, compa, porque de algo teme.
Daddy, Neto, de Black, Peque, lo hacemos por cultura y tú lo haces por los billetes.
Daddy, Neto, de Black, Peque, venimos a un barrio humilde llamado F.D.M. Venimos a un barrio humilde llamado F.D.M.
Ya. Ese es Steve Brother, man.
Bórralo.
Yeah.
Entonces, el libro de grabando su primer video profesional.
Televisión.
Yeah.
Este es el barrio.
Brother,
Hermano de calle Punta.
Bueno, mi gente, Villacura en alta. Vamos para adelante con Zamora Televisión.
Bajándonos de una de las tomas de F.D.M Family, la toma más peligrosa. Esta toma la vamos a llamar.
No lo intenten en casa.
No, lo vamos a llamar, ¿cómo se llama esta toma? El chico Valentino. Bórralo. Este peque. Bajando.
Bienvenido a F.D.M.
Cuidado.
con coraje y orgullo optimizando toda la área. Somos diferentes.
Pasó, hermano.
Cámara, esta de cámara que me van a sacar.
Cuidado,
Tu boy, que la cámara.
Llénate de información.
Francisco de Miranda es
In my last video, I talked about how various traumas, repressions, and different energies need to come out of us during periods of psychosis in order for us to heal bipolar disorder. However, there is one part of the healing that, while not so disturbing for the bipolar person, can be extremely disturbing for our families. So disturbing, in fact, that they could motivate them to want you medicated for your entire life. And what is this horrific thing that needs to be stopped at all costs? The truth. Family secrets. Everybody's got them. And they're not all so horrible. For example, when I found out when I was about 15 that every time my grandfather talked about his time in college, he was actually talking about the time he spent in jail for fraud. As it turned out, for years, college had been the family code word for prison. And then there was the time I found out I was part Micmac Indian. Actually, I found that pretty cool. However, for most of us, the truths we need to talk about during psychosis are much more serious than that. Family secrets such as rape or incest, if mentioned, can tear apart the entire family structure. Now, these secrets could be of a personal nature, like telling the family that you're gay. It could be just stating the obvious, like perhaps that your parents haven't loved each other for 20 years, even though they keep acting like they do. Or it could be something that you did that you consider to be a sin. And it was from working with a few people in psychosis, as well as receiving a lot of emails, that I gained a new appreciation for the ritual of confession within the Catholic Church. Because it became apparent to me that a lot of us, maybe all of us, are carrying around stuff that we want to get off our chest. Now, in my case, my parents were quite receptive to what I had to say, but I know for the most part, parents usually aren't. Typical responses from parents when bipolar people bring up the truth are things like, well, what are you getting so emotional about? Or, you're crazy, your thoughts are wrong. Or, I don't understand you, haven't we given you a good life? These are all ways that the family denies the truth of what the bipolar person is saying. And then to make matters worse, when confronted with all this truth, they take the person to the psychiatrist, who covers the whole thing over with the biggest lie of all, which is that the person is mentally ill. That's why they're having these thoughts and feelings. The reason they're mentally ill is they've got a chemical imbalance, they need drugs, and their thoughts and feelings are basically to be ignored. And of course, this is a huge relief for the family, who can now wash their hands of the whole experience, knowing that there's nothing really wrong with them or their family. The only problem is that their daughter has a little bit too much serotonin going to the brain. Or maybe it's dopamine. Or maybe it's not enough serotonin. I don't know, I get mixed up. So when the opportunity presents itself, clearing of the conscience of personal secrets, family secrets, untold truths, sins of the past, can be a very healing experience when you're in psychosis. Now, there's one family secret that is, in a sense, universal to all families, and yet most people are completely unaware of it. And that secret is that on this planet today, it is highly unlikely that you are going to have two parents that love you unconditionally. What is far more likely, even in the best of families, even in the most healthy of families, is that you may have one parent that loves you unconditionally. You feel their presence of love anytime you're with them, and you feel that you can do no wrong with that one parent, but the other parent will never give you a break, never let you feel like you're completely worthy of their love. If you're doing well in high school, they'll push you, why aren't you getting a part-time job? Once you graduate university, they'll be pushing you to get a full-time job. Then once you've got that, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? When are you planning for your retirement? It never ends. So why does your father or mother do that to you? Why do they hold back love? Well, they don't do it consciously. They do it because their father or mother, your grandparents, held back love from them. And the reason your grandparents held back love is because your great-grandparents held back even more love. In fact, the further you go back in time, generation to generation, what you'll see is an increasing level of general coldness and rigidity among the generations. And that's because the further back you go in your family history, the lower the level of consciousness you will encounter among the people there. And with a lower level of consciousness comes a lower capacity for compassion, not only with your own family, but with other people around you. And the two best examples of this lower level of consciousness is what was going on with women's rights 100 years ago. Basically, women weren't even treated as citizens. And then, of course, there's the racism. You really think Barack Obama would have beat Teddy Roosevelt? Somehow, I think not. Now, please keep in mind when I talk about a generation, I am referring generally, and that in any generation of people or in any culture, some people were ahead of others. So that someone like Abe Lincoln or Nelson Mandela were clearly ahead of the level of consciousness of their own cultures. And what's the end result of receiving this coldness that has come down from our ancestors? Well, it basically leaves us with a feeling of a void in our soul, a sense of emptiness in our life, because we didn't receive all of the unconditional love that we could have when we were young. Now, the good news is that there's a tremendous opportunity to heal this void in the soul when a person's in psychosis. The only trouble is how you go about healing this void in the soul is very controversial in itself. Because what it requires is that when the person in psychosis asks for affectionate love, that love be delivered by the support people or by the therapist. So in practical terms, what that means is that the person in psychosis may look to a supporter for a tremendously warm, affectionate, loving embrace. And while the support person needs to maintain the sacred spirit of the experience, not allowing things to become sexual, the intensity of affection shared could be extremely intimate, the type that we usually only reserve for our lovers. Now, this kind of contact is considered illegal today because of the risk of sexual impropriety, and in fact the great psychiatrist Dr. John Weir Perry lost his license because he was providing this kind of warm affection to female clients. However, Dr. Stangroff insists on the therapeutic benefits of this approach, saying that basically once your soul's void is filled, you're no longer looking for mother figures or father figures in your relationships, and you can find someone that's better suited to your true personality. So just to finish off, whether you're trying to fill this soul's void, or whether you're trying to speak truths or personal secrets that have been hidden for years, both of these movements are trying to bring a deeper level of integrity to your life as you move forward. So while what you're doing or saying may shock people or rock the boat for a short period of time, down the road these movements are going to make for a better life for you, making you healthier and more alive. It'll also allow you to raise your kids whenever you have them with a little more warmth than you had growing up. And finally, please remember that while all of these issues have a lot to do with our families, especially our parents, try to keep in mind that chances are if you've got it rough, probably your parents had it even tougher from their parents, and that the people out there with the biggest problems to deal with are the people with no parents at all. Next up, how to deal with and heal aggression during psychosis.